is David Toulis with New Radio 92.7 FM. We are the multimedia platform and member of the press that has a tremendous tower, 92.7 FM, and also 95.3 FM HD4. Our tower is so tall that it lets me boast as being the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga. The news out of the courts today is that the daughter of Avery Gray, the 14-year-old young woman named Kennedy, has been the charge against her has been dismissed in juvenile court. And I'm here with Marie Mott, our new host. Her show will be starting Monday at 11. We are discussing questions pertaining to city government. And one of the things that we want you to think about, you, our listener, is the role of city council. Does city council have any role in regulating and improving and reforming even the police department? I think I think, Marie, there's a sense that I sort of pick up in my dealings with people in government. There's a sense that the police department for the city is somehow apart from any particular elected official. It stands by its own. It is its own identity, not really accountable to the people, and that's its strength. Its strength, its benefit, its virtue is that it is not accountable. It is free to enforce the law. It does represent the interest of the law itself, that holy body of commands and prohibitions. And somehow it really can't be. You really don't want to mess with it. You don't want to try to control it because that makes it political, right? And is that a true perception? And is the idea true that somehow policing is not accountable to the people?
Policing is absolutely accountable to the people, right? And in particular, again, let's not forget our city council as well as the mayor were the ones who are responsible for putting Chief Roddy into place. And so one of the things that we were effectively looking for was a difference in leadership. We were looking for there to be a difference in the police department. And I will give Chief Roddy credit. He did come forth after the city council meeting on Tuesday and said that he is open to conversation. So one of the questions that I have, and one of the things that I want the listener to think about, because we just report and you decide, is we want you to think about, like, obviously he doesn't have a problem with talking, right? Obviously he's open to dialogue. And imagine if the city council would just say, hey, Chief Roddy, we have the community that are reaching out to us about this particular issue that involves city police. Can we talk to you about that? Can we have a sit down meeting about that, and not wait until you have a line of people that come to the city council meeting and effectively beat you over the head with a stick saying, hey, why aren't you listening to us? We should be able to look to our leadership with hope, with promise, that when these instances of injustice arise, that they are going to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to act. Not to sit silent, not to be belligerent, but they are going to act. And again, 800-8949, 800-8949. Call us and tell us what you think on this issue.
Well, I was looking, Marie, through my Tennessee jurisprudence report on police power. And in fact, yesterday when you were here in the studio, I asked you to find on the first two pages of this well-marked photocopy the point of which where is the source of police power. So police power is exercised by the executive branch. Policing is an executing of the law, and in city government, police departments have the authority to enforce ordinances. I would say that that's their main job, is the ordinances, and yet policing is used mostly for state jurisdiction. But the report says that the police power, which is a general concept, it arises from the idea of the state as a sovereign. It arises from, according to one court case, from the people. It is a power from the people. So you are right when you excoriated city council and excoriated city government on Tuesday in your 5-minute oration in public there, to say that the people on the council are accountable to the voters, because the police power at issue, the power that we understand to be under abuse, comes from the people themselves.
That is absolutely correct. I didn't spare anyone. I talked effectively to the council because it is very, very important for us to understand what is good today for the few may effectively be good for everyone. We cannot absolve ourselves from these issues. I have a firm belief that we cannot overcome what we do not confront. And I don't believe in coincidence. To have two issues legitimately in under about 2.5 weeks speaks to maybe the culture of police officers. And then for that to happen in what should be, as the Councilman Byrd talks about, a thriving district, an upcoming district, or a district that is on the move. Well, I implore you, sir, that if that is the case, if you're going to be progressive, if you're going to tout that the district is on the move, then, sir, you have a responsibility that surely you, above the rest of the council members, that this happened within your backyard. This happened to the community that you are responsible for. And so I really didn't expect any statements from any of the other councils. I really expected Mr. Byrd to step up above all, because this happened in his backyard.
Well, when I met Anthony Byrd just after he had taken office, I said, Anthony Byrd, I was trying to get him on my show, so I went back into the inner sanctum there behind the glass door, asking for him. And I said, how many police stops or police encounters have you had? And his answer was 20, 30, 40, I've lost count. And if you asked me that question, I would say probably about 2 or 3. And there's a difference between the public perception and the governmental agent perception of the two races, black and white. I'm not stopped routinely because I'm traveling about, but a young black man certainly can deal with that. And so there are a number of people on the city council who are African American. There's Demetrius Coonrod. There's, of course, Anthony Byrd, Erskine Oglesby, new on the council. And Russell Gilbert has been there for a long time. So I would think that there should be a kind of an urgency on their part. But I would say that it really is not a racial matter here. There should be the problem in the police department is not that it's racist. That is not my analysis. My analysis is that it rejects the limitations of the law, which is probable cause. There has to be probable cause for there to be a stop, and probable cause is something where the officer has seen a crime or he has a warrant. Was there a crime about to be committed that he knows about, or he has a warrant for someone's arrest? So there are 3 main reasons. And if there's a traffic encounter, the traffic encounter from Diana Watt was clearly she was not they could determine very quickly that she was not a commercial user, even though she had a tag on her car, presumably making that car a motor vehicle. It's an SUV, a motor vehicle in commerce. They could clearly determine that she was not. And in fact, they assumed that she wasn't because they didn't ask for her manifest or contracts or anything like that would be part of a business use of a car on the road. They didn't ask that. So they presumed that she was just a private user. And yet they treated her under Title 55 as if she were commercial. And I've told the city government, Marie Mott, that they can't do that. I've told them that Title 55 in what's called Transportation Administrative Notice does not allow for that. And yet it is policy for this ultra-virus enforcement. That is to say, enforcement outside the view, outside the scope of the law. The law is a foot wide, and yet it's enforced as if it were 5 yards wide, scooping in every possible user of the road here in the city. And there's a legal problem there, and I'm real concerned about the personal assets of each officer who is doing this enforcement activity apart from the statute. He's following state policy, granted, but it's outside the scope of the statute. And all some complainant has to do in a lawsuit against that individual officer is to say that that department has been notified by Transportation Administrative Notice of the real scope of the statute, despite an activist judiciary policy. So I think we need to encourage the city council members to say that we have had enough of this. There's a culture, especially on my reporting, a culture of abuse, a culture of perjury. And I'm thinking of the Hanson Melvin case last year, which will be going to trial at the hands of probably one of the best attorneys in Chattanooga, Clay Whitaker. in November, and their $500,000 damages is being sought for a false arrest, false statement, perjury, oppression, and a kind of conspiracy against the rights of a common man by a gaggle of officers who all were using their cell phones to harass this poor man who happens to be a minority. He just happens to be black. And he happens to be a Christian. Again, no matter. The issue is the use of power against the citizenry apart from lawful cause, and that, if you put it that way, you are perhaps stealing ammo from African American activists. But I want to see the issue is the law itself not being properly respected.
Absolutely. And to go back to what one of the callers said earlier, just police in treating people as human beings with decency and respect. You know what? If you want to improve the relationship between police and community effectively overnight without changing uniforms, without removing weapons for the most part, how about when you approach people, just approaching them with patience, kindness, and decency and respect? The same thing that you would want me as a human being to approach anyone in your family. If you're a good person, let's say if you're a good person, if I met them in the street and they needed help or they were going through something and I stopped to ask them if they were okay or if they needed help, that is the same type of respect or interaction I expect between police.
Mayor Burke oversees the police department, and he also sees a like department in that public safety, safe streets part of his budget, and that's the fire department. The fire department has a very different ethic and a very different purpose.
Absolutely. One of the things that we have to, as far as push leadership, is when we are effectively giving the majority of the city's budget goes to the police department. Well, we have tens, and I read it, what was it, $74 million? $74 million of the city's budget is going to go to the police department. If we're not going to have reform, which was the whole ticket that they sold us on anyways, right? That was what they sold us on when they made this new appointment within the police department, was that we were going to push for some sense of reform. And so when we see that no reform effectively is happening, then I expect there to be a situation where the mayor steps up or city council steps up and say, we're not going to improve this budget until we see the police department stepping up and how they are treating citizens. I'm not going to give them half of the city's budget if they're going to allow instances of injustice to happen to citizens. We're going to cut that in half, or we're going to cut that by a third. 800-8949, 800-8949. Call us and tell us what you think on this matter. Do you think we should be giving $74 million to the police department if they are not going to fulfill the promise of reform?
Well, the story, and we do have a call. This is David Toulis, and caller, you're live with Marie Mott and me. What's on your mind?
Mr. Toulis, this is Johnny Allen. I just want to tell you that I think you are very wonderful. Your voice, your comments only give me hope. And Miss Marie Mott, she's an outstanding lady, and I appreciate you all having her on, and I'm behind you all's back 100%. Your voice, when I hear you talk, it gives me a sense of safety, because living here in Chattanooga and things that been done to me, I was living in fear. And just your voice and this young lady who has risen up and you all have taken her under your wings, I appreciate that so much, and that gives me and my son hope.
Well, ma'am, you are so kind to say that, and don't get off the phone. I wanted to ask you a question, but hold on just a second. We are very excited to have met Marie Mott, and I asked Marie when I first conversed with her. I said, Marie, who are you? Where have you come from? She is a pastor's daughter. And she has a godly sense of indignation at injustice, and that is what we want to do, caller. And one question I have for you is there something we can help you with? We are here to try to help people, and my way of helping people is simply to hear enough of their problem and to learn about their distress, and then what I do is I write about it and I talk about it, because in writing something and in reporting on something, I help just telling what happened to you, telling the other people, ma'am, why you're afraid, that is a very cleansing thing, and that brings results. People on the city council, you're a council member if you live in the city, will hear about that because you said it through me. And we're called the media because we're mediums. We're between the listener and the reader and the information, which is you, our caller. And we're here to air what is happening. We are here to give a report about life in Chattanooga with the hope, especially Marie Mott's heart, of making it more full of God's grace, more comfort, more reassurance. Even men with guns are good. That's why we have probably 25,000 armed citizens in the county who are concealed carry weapons carrier. They're honorable men. They have good character. We want people like that. Just because you have a gun doesn't mean that someone has to be afraid of you. Right. And because we care, every person who carries a weapon concealed probably has a very high ideal. I'm here to defend women and children. If there's some evil circumstance, I'm here to defend myself. And I'm effectively keeping order. So the people keep order in our city, just like you, ma'am. You're involved in keeping order on your block where you live, aren't you? Don't you have a way about you of making things right in your immediate environment, ma'am?
Well, not exactly. I have been terrorized. Have you ever heard of this thing called covert harassment? Me and my son have looked this up on the internet, and what can happen is the perpetrator can hire people to move in beside you and make annoying noises and to terrorize you to wear you down. And this is what has happened to me. We have been surrounded by a convoy of all black cars at the red light. It can be from 3, 4, 5 black cars. There can be 3, 4. I have seen as many as 12. And I had wrote the state and asked them, I say, is it something I've done or what is it? And I'm really have taken notes. Some notes have been stolen. People have come into our house, just like this apartment where I live. Anywhere that I go in my apartment, the overhead tenants walk in sync as I walk. And if you think I'm having, a crazy or anything, there are people who have put this on the internet that they have been terrorized by this same plague. Is bullying, and it has to be person who's paying proxies for people to do this. We've called the rent office. We've sent to the ACLU. I've called HUD. If I could sign a paper for you all to pull my records. And let's see, it was December 31st, 2016. It was between 1 and 1:30. I tried to call the ACLU about the people over me stalking me in my apartment. And this young girl broke in while the phone was still ringing, December 31st, 2016. This little girl, you ain't gonna get a chance to speak to no Department of Justice. If you got anything to say, you leave it on this answering machine.
Well, ma'am, I do suggest one thing to your advantage, making your records. And what I propose to my listener is when some suspicious or dark or evil circumstance occurs, make an affidavit. For example, Alan DeBerry, the young man involved in the Red Bank police caused riot at the gallery venue, was smart enough to make a very, very good affidavit as soon as he could after that event. He kept very good records. He kept his own personal notes, and then he worked up an affidavit, which in fact, I've published at Nuganomics, a very good review of what happened that night, where he and 3 other young people were arrested by kind of riotous police action in Red Bank. So making a record is very, very good. And we do thank you for calling, and do hope you tune into Marie's program starting Monday every day at 11 o'clock, ma'am. Thank you so much for calling.
All right. And could you have her to call me, because this doctor who is faced the situation that you all are complaining about, he's having the same problem from the same head, not so much as being harassed that I know of, but it's coming from the same entity. And I think you and her would give him some hope.
Well, I appreciate your call, ma'am. I dare say the problem you have is probably a larger one that we can report on here at Newton Radio 927, but we are glad you called. Thank you again for calling. This is David Lewis with Marie Mott. We are here every weekday at 9. We're brought to you by Nukenomics.com. And remember, jot this down, 800-8949, 800-8949. David Lewis with Marie Mott. Again, thanks for joining us.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Early voting begins in Hamilton County. Until the 28th, you can cast your ballots for a variety of races, including governor and U.S. Senate, along with local positions for sheriff, mayor, commissioners, and school board. You may vote at the Brainerd Rec Center, Collegedale City Hall, the Election Commission off Amnicola, and the Hickson Community Center. Day 2 of testimony in the